Okay, welcome everybody. This is the third session of the 2022 third term. Next term we will have another three sessions as well. Today we will talk about the infrastructure in China. Before we move on, I would like to follow up with something from last week. Again, last week we talked about Chinese renewable energies. So here's another video I should have put in last week.
When many of us hear the words China and energy, we immediately think of coal power stations, polluting factories, and cities full of smog. And why not? It's by far the world's biggest emitter of carbon emissions. It consumes way more energy than any other country. And whereas other big nations have agreed to phase out coal, China hasn't. Because of this, it's kind of become the lead villain in the fight against climate change, the one country that everyone says is to blame for this whole mess. Now, while that's understandable, it's not entirely accurate. Yes, China's fossil fuel use is astronomical, but it's also the world's largest installer of renewable power by some distance, and it's set to go much bigger. The country's leading the way in other clean energy technologies, and the scale of its carbon-cutting plans has taken many by surprise. So, is it time we were less harsh on China when it comes to energy, or could this turn out to just be smoke and mirrors? When we say China produces more carbon emissions than anyone else, we really do mean it. In 2019, over a quarter of the world's entire greenhouse gases came from China. That's more than twice as much as the US in second place. The country now has over 1,000 coal power plants in operation, more than half the global total.
From the global perspective, China is obviously the world's largest emitter of CO2 because of the very high reliance on coal and also massive emissions from its construction industry.
Lauri Muliverta is lead analyst at the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air based in Helsinki.
Over the past decade, China's been responsible for 2/3 of the increase in global emissions. So that makes it very hard for global emissions to peak and decline without China's emissions growth at least slowing down.
Although it now has a target of net zero carbon by 2060, that means reducing emissions as much as possible and balancing out the rest by removing carbon from the atmosphere, other big nations have said they'll do that quicker. You can understand then why China is seen by many as the leading cause of our current predicament. But there's another side to this story, and that's the enormity of China's renewable energy projects. For years now, the country's been the world's biggest generator of wind and solar power. In fact, it's in a whole league of its own, and the gap is widening. In 2020, it added more wind power to its energy mix than the entire world did in 2019, the largest figure ever recorded. Solar power's also booming, with China responsible for around 1/3 of the world's energy generated from the sun. But it isn't investing so much into renewables because of international pressure and the demand for yet more energy, although those are both key factors.
China is obviously vulnerable to climate change, especially water resources, food security, which are central issues to the party and to the government. The floods this summer were one of the first times that extreme weather like this was attributed to climate change by Chinese scientists. That's certainly driving the message home that this is also something that it is in China's own self-interest to act on.
Now, while the overall capacity of China's renewable energy system may be astonishing, the individual projects are pretty immense too. Recently, the country completed construction of a 2.2 gigawatt solar plant in Qinghai, almost the biggest in the world by capacity, a record that's currently held by the Vadla solar plant in India. There are also reports it could be massively expanded to 10 gigawatts, which would not just give it the top spot, but make it 3 times bigger than any other station on Earth today. Floating solar power, where panels are mounted to a buoyant platform, is another new area that China leads the way in. Some of the biggest installations in the world can be found right here. These are just a few examples of China's plans to build increasingly large renewable hubs. Rumors of a gigantic new 400 gigawatt wind and solar mega project were seemingly confirmed by President Xi himself in October 2021, with a 100 gigawatt first phase already underway. Details of precisely where that's happening are unclear, but it's likely to be in the vast desert region to the west of the country, where the bulk of the other big farms are. That's one of the reasons why China's building so much more than everyone else. It has the space. Even though most of the energy is needed on the other side of the country where the main cities and industrial centers are, it's not been too big a problem.
Many other countries are struggling, like getting planning permits and environmental permits, especially for long distance transmission lines, which tend to be very hard in Europe, many parts of the United States, and so on. There is an advantage in having a centralized decision-making system that can override some of those challenges.
Another reason why China's trying to be less reliant on coal is because it kind of has to be. Rises in coal prices have seen power plants lower their output so they don't lose money, which has led to severe blackouts and power shortages. Having more renewable energy in the mix would take some of the strain off the coal network. But despite all this, China's emissions continue to grow. Although it's said these will peak by 2030, that could still leave almost a decade more of rising fossil fuels, when other big economies are cutting theirs. China's still constructing coal plants too, adding around 40 gigawatts of new coal power in 2020 alone. But it has pledged to stop building them abroad in a move that could make a big difference to global emissions.
There's no more international financing available for new coal. For countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Turkey that have relied heavily on overseas financing to expand their coal fleet, that really means they have to have a serious rethink about their energy plans.
It's not as if China's severing ties completely, leaving all these countries quite literally in the dark. Instead, it plans to offer similar support for clean energy, giving nations that struggle to transition away from fossil fuels a helping hand. All for a price, of course. Then there's China's ambition to become a leader in other areas of clean energy, such as battery storage, and technologies that are yet to be properly developed but show plenty of promise. The Inner Mongolia region, historically one of its largest coal mining areas, is where China plans to build a mega plant for the production of green hydrogen, which could become the first of its kind anywhere in the world. Now, hydrogen becomes green when it's generated using 100% clean power, rather than coal or natural gas. And potential uses include fuel cells for vehicles and home heating. Several countries are in a race to master this technology, and you wouldn't bet against China being the one to do it. So, when you weigh everything up, does China deserve to be criticized in the way it is today, or is it a bit misunderstood? And perhaps more importantly, is it actually going to deliver on what it said it's going to do?
The government will certainly make sure that they meet what they've pledged so far. Right now, what's in preparation is sectoral implementation plans for key sectors such as steel, cement, non-ferrous metals, power, transport, and so on. And that's where we would hope to see some of that detail about how ambitious the targets are going to be over this decade, and that's really going to set the pace.
While it's clear that many people aren't aware of the more positive stuff China's doing and the progress being made, it has a lot of work to do if it's going to meet those promises and have the finger of blame pointed elsewhere. Even though every country has a part to play in this, you can't help but feel that the battle to beat climate change is going to be won or lost in China. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about where construction is headed.
Okay, the next one.
Every day I can wake up and tell myself that I'm doing something about climate change, that I'm doing something that matters, that will matter to my children's generation.
Nuclear energy, as we all know, makes carbon-free electricity. The United States has used nuclear energy to create baseline power for decades, but nuclear energy carries a dreadful stigma. Following tragedies such as Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima, the public is painfully aware of nuclear energy's potential, though misguided, dangers. The cost of nuclear power production is rising, in sharp contrast to the falling prices of our energy resources. such as solar and wind, which have lately gained enormous popularity. This trend may continue until market factors make nuclear power obsolete. Into this dynamic comes a resurgence in nuclear technology. Liquid fluoride thorium reactors, or LFTRs, lifters, a form of molten salt reactor that is much safer than the traditional nuclear reactor. More on that later. LFTRs power a reactor using a mix of thorium, a common element extensively found in the soil, and fluoride salts. Thorium is the 90th element on the periodic table and the second heaviest element on Earth, and well known for its ability to supply nuclear energy in nuclear reactors. Similar to uranium, the modern world's go-to nuclear fuel. It was named after Thor, the Norse god of thunder, by Swedish scientist Jöns Jacob Berzelius in 1828. Thorium-232, or T232, is the only thorium isotope found in nature, and is about 3 times more plentiful in the Earth's crust than uranium. India and China, 2 of the massive nations in the world, have a lot more thorium than uranium, so using it as a nuclear fuel only seems to be a good option. But how does it work? A typical configuration of a modern thorium-based reactor is similar to a convention reactor, but with notable changes. First, thorium-232 and uranium-233 are mixed with fluoride salts in the reactor core, where heat and neutrons are emitted from the core during fission and absorbed by the surrounding salt. This creates a uranium-233 isotope. As the thorium-232 takes on an additional neutron, the salt melts into a molten state, which heats an inert gas, helium, that drives a turbine to create energy. Then radiated salt is sent into a post-processing unit, where the uranium is separated from the salt and returned to the core to restart the fission process, which means thorium reactors make less radioactive waste and can also reuse separated uranium, making the reactor self-sufficient when operating. To top it off, LFTRs are low-pressure nuclear systems unlike other high-pressure systems, providing a safer work environment for workers. Additionally, the fluoride salts have very high boiling points, meaning even a large spike in heat will not cause a massive increase in pressure. Both of these elements significantly reduce the possibility of a containment explosion, and since LFTRs do not need extensive cooling, they can be installed anywhere and air-cooled. If the core fails, gravity will allow the heated and radiated salt to pour into passive through underground fail-safe containment chambers, capped by an ice plug that melts upon contact. By the early 21st century, many engineers in the field weren't even aware of thorium reactors. Today, there are many different thorium reactor designs under development, especially in India and China. Here's a look at some of the thorium reactors that are operating, being built, or are still on the drawing board. Heavy water reactors, or AHWRs, reactors are the ones that are neutrons are delayed or moderated by heavy water, which is chemically similar to typical light water. But the hydrogen atoms are replaced with deuterium, which is hydrogen with an additional neutron. Light water naturally moving in a pool driven by gravity provides cooling. Because it absorbs neutrons, thorium is an excellent fuel for AHWRs. Furthermore, the technology has been used for decades in heavy water reactors such as CANDU, or Canada Deuterium Uranium. Once as a driving fuel is replaced with recycled uranium-233, the thorium cycle produces 80% of the energy. High-temperature gas-cooled reactors, or HTRs, are Generation 4 reactors that use thorium-based fuels in the form of pebbles, covered with pyrolytic carbon and silicon carbide layers, which retain fission gases, and then coated with graphite, which works as a moderator and protects the fuel from high temperatures. The fuel is injected into these pebble bed reactors from the top, and the waste particles are removed from the bottom. Cooling in the process is done by circulating helium gas. Next, boiling water reactors, or BWR, as the name suggests, generate steam and spinning in turbines by boiling the coolant water. They have the benefit of having a flexible design, with fuel rods of various lengths and compositions that can be arranged in a core to support thorium-plutonium fuels. It is possible to arrange the thorium elements in these reactors to convert the BWR into a breeder reactor that produces more fuel than it consumes, which is not generally possible with thermal neutron cores. But now the big question, the cost. Starting from scratch could be considered somewhat of an issue, since the overheats tied to the thorium reactor are a little costly. But as far as the cost question goes, for the fuel, It is considerably cheap since thorium is readily available throughout the Earth's crust. It has a 500 times higher concentration than fissile uranium-235. In fact, it is produced by a byproduct of the rare earth metal extraction. With extraction solely focused on thorium, enough of it can be obtained to fuel reactors for thousands of years. For a 1 gigawatt facility, the cost of the fuel would be around $5 million. That's on the low side because no expensive fuel enrichment operations or solid fuel rod manufacturing are needed, resulting in much cheaper fuel costs than a similar solid fuel reactor. And unlike a conventional reactor, post-chemical processing would allow a thorium reactor to effectively use nearly all of its fuel, leaving little waste or byproduct. Finally, a thorium plant will run on around 45% thermal efficiency, with additional turbine cycles potentially increasing total efficiency to 50% or even higher, meaning that it will be up to 20% more efficient than a standard light water reactor. As a bonus, any remaining radioactive waste cannot be used to make any weapons. The cost of fuel is much cheaper than a solid fuel reactor. The substitute salts are around $150 per kilogram, while thorium is around $30 per kilogram. It is more ecologically friendly than uranium since it is safer and more efficient to mine. The percentage of thorium in its mine is often higher than the percentage of uranium in its mine, mainly because thorium mines are open piles that do not need ventilation, while uranium mines are closed off when radion levels reach potentially deadly levels. That's not all. 1 ton of thorium can make as much energy as 35 tons of uranium in a liquid fluoride thorium reactor. Conventional reactors use less than 1% uranium, but a well-functioning reprocessing reactor can use 99% of its thorium fuel. So what's the catch? Why don't we just simply switch to this energy model? LFTRs do have certain short sides. There are major gaps in research and materials required for reactors. The post-processing chemical facilities that would remove uranium from the molten salts for reuse have yet to be built. To start a reactor, each reactor would need some highly enriched uranium, which is quite costly. Scientists believe that a $5 billion investment over the next 5 years might result in a feasible reactor option in the United States. But with limited funding for thorium, this vision is a little murky. The public stigma associated with nuclear power is real, and it has to be addressed before lawmakers can take action. It will be impossible to advance this technology without public and scientific backing. Proper awareness is required to help promote thorium or any nuclear energy for that matter. Thorium reactors are one of a kind to generate power that has the potential to help the entire globe. LFTRs might as well be the answer for the future of our world's energy demands, mainly because they are more efficient than the fossil fuel counterparts, safer than a traditional nuclear plant, and produce no carbon emissions as a byproduct. A win-win situation in all departments.
Okay. Before we embark on the infrastructure proper, let me show you a fun game between a mother and son. The mother is sitting on a wheelchair holding a walking stick, and the son is holding something circular, and they are playing ball games. Let's have a look. Very good hand-eye coordination. Okay, Chinese infrastructure. We all know that Chinese built and built and built and built. So today I'm not going to talk about the politics or the technology itself. Rather I will show you collections of videos and to give you an idea what kind of work is being done in China at the moment.
China has won many firsts and is known for its top position in infrastructure construction. It was branded as infrastructure-holic by the Chinese netizens. China is well deserved to be the best in infrastructure. In 2021, China's estimated spending for infrastructure was nearly 23 trillion yuan, or about 3.4 trillion US dollars. Currently, there are 5 major super projects on China's card, which will surely shock the whole world when completed. Now, let's take a look at some of the major upcoming projects by China. Sino-Russian cross-border high-speed rail. Just as the name suggests, it's a high-speed cross-border railway line that connects China and Russia. Even though many haven't traveled on China's high-speed rail, they may be aware of the title of China's high-speed rail. The high-speed rail technology has been dubbed by netizens around the world as one of China's greatest inventions and has become one of the many ideas that people around the world bring back to implement in their country. By the end of 2021, China's high-speed rail reached a mileage of more than 30,000 kilometers, which made them responsible for 60% of the world's high-speed rail mileage. China's construction of high-speed rail is not only limited to China, it's also spread its rail assistance to other countries, especially on the African continent, assisting the build a lot of high-speed rails in their countries too. Although, for now, there are only ordinary railway lines connecting China and Russia. It takes at least 6 days and 5 nights for an ordinary train to travel from China to Russia. Even though the train can meet the baggage requirements, the travel duration is too long for the transport of passengers, because of which most passengers rely on civil aviation aircraft rather than railway lines. So the Sino-Russian cross-border high-speed rail has a total length of 7,000 kilometers. After its completion, it will only take a day to reach Russia from China, which will result in the enhancement of personnel and economic exchanges between both the countries, and it may produce more opportunities for the economic development of both China and Russia. Not only this, but it will also be the largest railway project in the world, significantly promoting the economic development of the countries along the railway line. It's believed that the technical report of this project has been released, and it will be finished in 2026. This project will not only encourage the friendly alliance of both China and Russia, but will also play a major role in the enhancement of the relationship between China and the EU. Kyongsu Strait Cross-Sea Passage. The second major project is the Kyongsu Strait Cross-Sea Passage. It's an undersea tunnel that will connect Hainan Island and mainland China. Currently, the main source of transportation present between both the islands is ferries, even though the ferries are enough to meet the transportation needs. With the constant development of Hainan Island's economy, the timeliness of the ferry transportation will act as a major hindrance to economic development shortly. When the passage is completed, cars and even trains can enter and leave Hainan Island by entering through the undersea tunnel, which will result in improving the timeliness of goods transportation between the Hainan Island and the mainland, also providing an adequate guarantee for the future economic development of the local area. Even though the geological environment of the strait is complex and several factors are unfavorable to the cross-sea passage, with the progress of China in infrastructure, the construction of the bridges in the Kyongsu Strait can already be visualized. To completely cross the Chinese island Hainan from the mainland, one must travel the 30 kilometers wide and 120-meter deep Kyongsu Strait, which is not suited for the weak-hearted. Classified as part of China's inland waters, this strait is administered by the Kyongsu Strait Administrative Office. If any foreign-flagged vessels need to pass through the strait, they must abide by certain regulations, including the maximum sailing speed. The rules that are set to sail through the strait are pretty strict, and violations of these rules may lead to serious consequences. Motuo Hydropower Station. The third project is a super hydropower project initiated by the CCP, or the Chinese Communist Party, that will surpass China's Three Gorges Dam. The Tibetan region of China has massive reserves of hydropower resources with huge economical and environmental benefits. Once the hydropower station is completed and installed, capacity will be double the 3 hydropower stations in China, making it the world's top hydropower station. Also, with a plentiful water volume, the maximum power generation capacity of this hydropower station will reach thrice that of the Three Gorges. It will also access China's new energy base and will provide a powerful energy supply for China's social and economical development. These hydropower reserves are presumed to generate up to 200 billion kilowatts of electricity, which is equivalent to the annual power generation of all the present hydropower stations in China. If this power station is completed, then it will provide power to half of China in the future by itself. In 2019, it was reported by the Chinese media that the Motuo hydro plant would be built between 2030 and 2035 and will be completed by 2045 in the honor of giving tribute to the 100th year of the communist regime. In late 2020, the CCP announced its 14th five-year plan, in which it mentioned developing the hydropower potential of the Yarlung Tsangpo River. The Yarlung Tsangpo River is a cross-border river that flows from Tibet into India, known as Brahmaputra. Many experts believe that this project may be the riskiest mega-project ever taken. This river is the highest major river on the earth, averaging 4,000 meters above sea level. It travels through the secluded areas of the eastern Himalayas, making a very massive bend near the disputed border with the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. In the late 1990s, Chinese scientists declared the Yarlung Tsangpo to be the deepest river, measuring over 5,300 meters deep, which is almost 3 times the depth of the Grand Canyon in the US. Honki River Project. The third major project is the Honki River Project, also known as the Tibetan Water Entering Xinjiang Project. The main motive of this project is to transfer the ample amounts of water from the Yarlung Tsangpo River in Tibet to Xinjiang. For thousands of years, China has been planning water diversion. Eastern China holds nearly 43.2% of the country's land area and is home to nearly 94.4% of the country's population. And the West region covers over 56.8% of the land area, but only 5.6% live there. Although Xinjiang is known for its availability of large areas of land, due to its shortage of water resources, only a certain amount of fields have been developed and utilized, and the rest of the remaining field has been degraded into saline, alkaline land. But Tibet is known for its richness in water resources, and if the same is introduced into Xinjiang, it will help in improving the ecological environment in the northwest region and solve the local water crisis and food production crisis. In addition, this land can be used for utilization and development purposes, allowing China to own hundreds of millions of fertile farmland, which significantly enhances China's agricultural production capacity. This whole project is nearly 6,188 kilometers long, and the volume of planned water transfer can reach up to 100 billion, which is as equal to 4 times China's south to north water diversion project. The overall cost of the whole project is nearly 4 trillion yuan, which is 10 times as much as the Three Gorges Dam project. Once this project is over, it's anticipated to bring Lopna back to life. Tiangong Space Station. The fifth super project is the Tiangong Space Station, which is the only one out of the 5 projects that have already started its construction in low Earth orbit between 340 and 450 kilometers. That's 210 and 280 miles above the surface. Shortly, China is set to launch various space station modules consecutively and finally build a modern space station with a total of 100 tons, which will mark the start of China's future space tour. How would you like a vacation in a palace in the sky? Is the exact meaning of the space station China is said to be currently constructing to operate in the low Earth orbit. Nearly about 110 cubic meters, so around 4,000 cubic feet of land habitable space, nearly just as 4% of the volume of an Olympic swimming pool. Tiangong isn't exactly designed to be a holiday destination, but instead provides living quarters to 3 Chinese astronauts to conduct scientific research. Started in 1992 under the title of the Project 921, when the finished space station represents the completion of the third and final step of the Chinese manned space program, which is said to be one of the most successful projects in history dedicated to the exploration of space. Being China's first long-term space station, Tiangong is said to be the goal of the third step of the China manned space program. The country has released its plans for bringing its station up to full operation by the end of this year. There are said to be 6 major missions, the first of which was just a few days ago and delivered thousands of pounds of supplies for upcoming missions, along with scientific experiments. In June, it is planned that a fresh crew of taikonauts, or Chinese astronauts, will arrive for a 6-month-long mission in orbit. Then, in July, the second module, When Clean, or Ask the Heavens, will join the original Tianhe, which was launched back in April 2021. Then followed by the third and the final module, Mengtian, or Dreaming of the Heavens, which is scheduled to be launched in October. That means within a matter of 6 months, China will have enough space to conduct a crew rotation. With the International Space Station out of commission in the next few years, it is said that the Chinese space station will be the only space laboratory operating in orbit. And believe it or not, China, with all its missions in the coming years, is planning to take over space. So, the above mentioned projects are the most difficult upcoming projects developed by China. Overall, in Chinese history, there has never been a shortage of miracle projects, and that is because of the wisdom and never giving up attitude of the Chinese people. In terms of the global bridge construction level, China is a well-deserved leader in the world. Most probably, there will be several other super projects, just like the above mentioned ones, and more people will observe the rise of the dragon. There are most of the difficult and record-breaking infrastructures in the world, many of which are made by China. After these projects are launched, the world will surely get to know the Chinese power. It's not that China is not ruling the world in the field of infrastructure, but this, for sure, will increase the respect by the other countries for China, which will lead to countries improving their relationship with China. Hope this turns out to be an informative video for you.
Okay, this video is back in 2020, in February. We know that in 2019 December or the end of 2019, there's a new coronavirus discovered, and then the epicenter is Wuhan. So, like any city, there isn't sufficient hospital beds for patients. So China launched into a rapid building process to build 2 infectious disease hospital within 20 days.
China made international headlines when it revealed that it had constructed a fully operational 1,500-room hospital in just 5 days. In response to a COVID-19 surge in the city of Nangong, in the province of Hebei, this amazing feat of engineering and logistics was carried out. It brought up memories of an earlier period of the pandemic when construction workers in Wuhan built a 1,000-bed hospital in just over a week. Hello and welcome back to our channel. We're back today to answer your question about how China builds so fast. Faster? It's hit or miss, I guess. When I first learned about the building, I slammed my head against the wall and discovered the hard way that there is no such thing as rapid and good construction in this world, while yet expecting flawless construction. In addition to following safety regulations, every construction project must adhere to critical routes, understand the strength of materials, and test often. A shortcut to hell, as the expression goes. As some construction companies build buildings in as little as 2 weeks, China's quick-paced construction sector has long been the focus of controversy and envy in certain other nations. Are China's rapid-fire construction foundations secure, though? After creating a 57-story skyscraper in just 19 working days, the Chinese construction company Broad Sustainable Building declared itself the quickest function in the world in April of last year. The prefabricated construction company, which prepared 90% of the structure at the factory before site work started, then put together the final 10% of the structure like a jigsaw puzzle on the job site. Alistair Campbell, investment manager Asia Pacific at Kames Capital, told CNBC via email, "I think this gives back to an innovative type of modular Lego-like structure. This is not an example of a Chinese builder erecting a structure as quickly as possible to make a profit and demonstrate loose building regulations. Since the Chinese have constructed so many massive apartment buildings over the past 20 years, the objective was more to illustrate an effective building technology." Even while some analysts claim that the construction businesses adhere to international building norms and laws, such speed has generated concerns about the sustainability, longevity, and safety of the buildings. One of China's main economic drivers is housing, but analysts have cautioned that declining property values and investment returns could be signs of a larger issue with the economy. The National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) data showed that property investment increased 5.3% from a year earlier in January to July, dropping from an increase of 6.1% in January to June in 2015. Property sales increased 26.4% per square foot, down from 27.9%. Let's get going with our video. Do like it and share it with your friends. How can China build so quickly? Even now, in the midst of the coronavirus, China's intrepid builders are working shockingly swiftly to build skyscrapers and high-speed rail bridges, in addition to erecting hospitals at a breakneck pace. So today, we're donning our hard hats and wondering just how China constructs so quickly. Hundreds of millions of people have been pulled out of poverty by China's modern economic boom, which is a little short of astounding. More quickly than any other civilization in human history, it urbanized its populace and built some pretty amazing infrastructure. Not least among the landmarks along the way are the biggest airport, largest dam, and veritable forest of brand new buildings. The People's Republic is light years ahead of any other nation on Earth, thanks to its investment of over $300 billion in about 40,000 kilometers of high-speed train infrastructure, and demonstrating its dedication to a future for its 1.5 billion residents focused on sustainable public transportation. When you take into account that the project only actually began in 2008, so how are they doing it so quickly? A big part of the solution is fantastic technology. For example, consider the cleverly titled SLJ 900, also known as the Iron Monster, and created by Beijing's Wonder Joint Machinery Company and built by the Shizong Railway Design Institute. Because of China's frequently rocky environment and numerous railway networks, it serves as the prototype for railroad development. Heavy-duty cranes are used to construct these elevated bridges, which must rise in the bridge or viaduct. These elevated cranes are then assembled. The span rises to wedge the iron mons in position, and the iron mons is finished on their 64 wheels. The bridge element operates in a distinctly different manner, using 64 wheels on 64 wheels to enter a lengthy piece of slide and then to position the new bridge on the blank, followed by the span. After that, a monster scroll was stopped so that the temporary factory next to the next portion could be collected. The 91-meter-long, 580-ton beast that makes up the temporary factory not only works faster and more efficiently for the railway, but it also looks great. Technology that is more convenient than conventional technology. Similar to the enormous 9.1-mile Major Bay Bridge that is now being built in Kunlun, southeast, has a solely HEFT of all these all-round types of machinery of 1,000 tons of the box girder. Set much higher expectations for them than you would during training. It is anticipated that the train will be extremely safe when completely injured in any of these orbits traveling between 120 and 220 miles per hour. The trip could be cut by 350 kilometers starting in 2025 as the prototype Maglev is now being tested near Shanghai. Another area where China excelled is reportedly deploying equipment with independent German engineering advisors is the tunnel. These machines merely have a boring machines and only cost $10 million per day for 10 meters. You will need $50 million to access China's railway network because although its lightning-fast hospital building construction technology is only one aspect of China's political nature, it may be costly before you comprehend the 1-kilometer tunnel of the United States. And the most crucial element might possibly be the regulatory structures. In the case of how to swiftly build, there is a similar project in the typical Western country in the West, comparing the procedure of setting up high-speed trains in China and has laid a full feasibility analysis on 1-meter track entrustment exercise. The establishment of a government-funded railway, especially in areas with low populations and potential for financial success, such as Dragon Zhujiang, will occur if the line is advantageous and there is not a tiny window of opportunity. In 2016, high-speed rail operated 3 billion trains, but there were also millions of dollars worth of additional issues, such as extreme weather conditions and damaged one-hour lines, which increased maintenance expenses and eliminated the honoring industry's earnings. It is thought to be an issue with the threat of development that the Beijing central government is occupying the build high-speed lines in Western nations to reroute the threats of development. Because of how it is better or worse, China views this as an issue. Therefore, as time passes, questions about Western developers become more and more frequent. It is concerning because it's frequently expensive and it may even result in a sentence of a few years, decades, or even centuries. The nature of electoral politics implies that Western leaders frequently do not want to sign potentially disagreeable contracts if the government decides that it needs this land so badly that it will only accept the least compensation. For instance, if a massive noisy construction project threatens to interrupt any candidate defending a seat in the next election, the politician will attempt to avoid making this difficult choice. This instead China's considerable amount of time. The senior leader does not have to respond to their constituents entirely differently, making arrangements that suit everyone's preferences, but China's long-term perspective is advantageous for the Chinese government's building business. They confidently invested time and money to acquire knowledge, appropriate profit penetrating iron monsters that would follow and prove all RD expenses during the 2016 railway infrastructure announcement that the railway infrastructure will spend 2.8 trillion yuan in Beijing WOW joint machinery in 2016. Infrastructure in China is not limited by its borders, according to its ambitious 2013 goal. A massive program known as the Belt and Road Project was unveiled by Chinese President Xi Jinping in 2013 with a target date of May 2017 for Asia, Europe, and Africa. Establishing a modern railway road and shipping municipality railway construction in China, utilizing Mombasa and Nairobi's Chinese machine modern tracks, along with Kenyan countryside along 700 meters each day, has taken 18 months. In advance, it should be noted that not every building project is a promise from the public sector to ensure the prosperity of the nation in the case of a private firm, but rather a flourishing economy. Furthermore, massive urbanization has allowed construction businesses and engineers to accomplish stunning and creative results in this regard, and they have also approved this so-called wall climbing monster, also known as a skyscraper machine, designed and built by Chinese engineers. To obtain their brainchild, they archive at least 8 patents. Biomoth 2010 has been utilized upstairs. Upstairs, 100 flies are used. Each wall climbing monster is at least 528 meters from China's highest tower, China. The 12 hydraulic jack weight bearing 400 tons, it erected a whole 3-day floor. Its hurricane proves that some critics claim that China's building is too rapid, if any of the things that are referred to as the ghost town city. However, China is betting that its population will only continue to grow and urinate, so it's best to have that infrastructure to establish in an orderly manner. They all believe that with the destabilizers of the global economy, many of these silent skyscrapers are destined to have a vacancy. Family, rather than allowing its enrollment in the Western critics, also refer to China's rights to the right of poor people or construction safety records and signal that the hospital erected in 5 days may appear fantastic. This promotional video, it might not stand the test of time. Why does it take roughly 28 days for poured concrete to cure and dry out? Whatever the reasons for any cracks, this process is invariably leading to bigger issues. Poured concrete makes up practically all modern buildings. In the spring, the British London Excel Convention Centre is changed into a high-tech hospital. According to the author of the title, the big popularity will eventually revert to its old usage of Excel, which is unquestionably more sustainable and economical. There is still debate on the perspective of perspective, namely whether China's rapid architecture is a miracle or an ambitious new technology involving near-zero budget and unheard-of intricate central planning when humans may be intelligent and the greatest challenge of our time. So, this was all about today's video. Let us know your thoughts about China.
Okay, these are the 2 long videos. Subsequent videos were much shorter. Look at the bridges. Okay, this is
the longest, highest, and fastest built on the planet, unparalleled, is perhaps the best word to describe the scale and ingenuity of China's bridge construction over the past 70 years. From ancient bridges dating back to the 9th century to modern mega bridges that are breaking records, China has built hundreds of dazzling new bridges, innovating, creative, functional, record-breaking, all shapes and sizes, with many topping the list of the highest and longest bridges in the world. The Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge, a stunning new bridge made entirely out of glass, has got a Guinness World Record. A Grand Canyon Skywalk is the world's longest and highest glass bridge, like a piece of white silk floating between the clouds and fog, 300 meters above the ground. The length of the bridge is 430 meters. And this is the highest and fastest outdoor elevator in the world. And this is both the longest sea crossing and the longest fixed link on Earth, with a length of 55 kilometers, connects Hong Kong, Zhuhai, and Macau together. Designed to withstand earthquakes and typhoons, the bridge was built using 400,000 tons of steel, enough to build 60 Eiffel Towers. This marks a new milestone in the integration process of the Greater Bay Area, a national strategy to create a world-class city cluster to lead the country's future development. The Danyang Kutsun Grand Bridge measures 165 kilometers and currently holds the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest bridge in any category. Spanning many valleys and connecting cities it runs through, this is an $8.5 billion viaduct on the Beijing-Shanghai High-Speed Railway. Its construction took almost 4 years, employing 10,000 people. It has been constructed so sturdy so it can withstand not only direct impacts from naval vessels weighing up to 300,000 tons, but also natural disasters such as typhoons and a magnitude 8 earthquakes. China holds 8 of the world's 10 highest bridge titles, soaring 565 meters above the Valley Gorge, which is the height of a 200-story building. Its 4-lane road deck reaches a dizzying height. The cost of construction, such a marvel, was not cheap. However, the bridge cost around $140 million. Today, the province of Guizhou is home to more high bridges than every other country on Earth combined. 54 out of the top 100 highest bridges are in Guizhou, towering above vertical limestone cliffs. This is UNESCO protected and often regarded as the most beautiful town in China, Phoenix Ancient Town, an area of outstanding natural beauty where mountains, water, and blue skies prevail. The bridges over the water display a harmony that is so often portrayed in traditional Chinese paintings. To appreciate the old and new, watch for our second series on bridges in China.
Sanyuan Bridge, extreme mega engineering. How China replaced a 1,300-ton bridge in 43 hours. CCTV just released a time-lapse video of the building, which took only 43 hours. The aim had been to complete the task in 24 hours, but the workers discovered that the damage was much worse than they had expected. How long does it take to build a bridge? Is it a month, 2 months, or a year and a half? As a result, China was able to build a bridge in 43 hours. This is amazing. The video is now available to the public, and Western netizens were taken away by China's quickness. In this 73-second clip, the Sanyuan Bridge reconstruction project in Beijing is detailed. This appears to be the rate at which China is moving. After experiencing the new miracle made by the Chinese bridge, Western netizens have not forgotten to be themselves and speak openly in the nation. To build such a bridge, at least 3 presidential administrations are necessary. There are numerous huge bridge projects in China, but the Beijing Sanyuan Bridge has gotten a lot of attention, both at home and abroad. The bridge is made of concrete and is cast in place. The bridge's life has been exhausted because to the bridge's relatively old construction period and high-strength use. The most successful technique is to completely renovate the bridge, which is well worth a visit. What I'd like to point out is that Beijing, as China's capital, has a sizable population, and the Sanyuan Bridge is located on one of Beijing's major thoroughfares. Even a 1-week construction phase, let alone a 1-month construction period, will have a significant impact on Beijing's traffic influence. As a result, the bridge replacement project will be completed within 24 hours as per the construction team's initial plan in order to minimize the impact of bridge construction on traffic. The plan is to cut the original bridge deck in its entirety, transport it straight using trucks, and then replace it at the original spot with a new bridge. Although the method appears to be simple, actually operating it is a difficult undertaking. This bridge, for example, is responsible for the removal of the old bridge. The weight is heavy, making removal quite difficult. As a result, the bridge can only be cut in pieces, which necessitates the use of multiple cutting machines. The construction crew chose integrated steel as the bridge support system rather than continuing with the concrete platform design for the new bridge surface materials. Steel bridges are significantly lighter than concrete bridges and are also easier to construct. Second, because concrete has a limited service life, the old San Yuan Bridge must be repaired. The steel bridge, on the other hand, has a considerably longer service life, eliminating the headache of later replacement. The bridge is designed to last at least 100 years. Even if it is necessary to replace it, the lighter structural weight makes it easier to do so. It's no surprise that worldwide netizens are dissatisfied with China's rapid creation of a successor for the San Yuan Bridge. After all, designing a bridge in their nation may take more than 10 years, and it will almost certainly be canceled halfway through. Bridges also surfaced due to a lack of finance, and development was suspended halfway through. Only during the presidential election, when the public's backing is needed, should bridge construction be increased. However, since the election, building progress has slowed, and it now takes 3 presidents to build a bridge, which is not a joke. Foreign netizens, of course, no longer have reason to admire China. After all, the globalization plan has been put into action, and we have supported various Asian and
Okay, that's enough for this one. Let's look at a few very short one. Okay, and then this one.
I am lost.
Wow, this one. Or doing it in this way. Now the Chinese excavator have no man, it is remotely controlled. So
现在我是在这边远程操控这个运输车辆来运行轨迹，然后我这边控制启动，它会自动运行。如果说这边出现什么状况，我这边都可以监控到。以前的话，一个车就是需要一个司机来去开它，对吧？但是现在的话，我一个人可以控制15辆车，就是15辆车可以正常运行。我这边只需要负责它一个启动或者停止，它就可以自动运行嘛。
Okay, about roads.
This is how China is redrawing the map of world science. China's remarkable achievements, visually stunning and life-changing. This country's impressive road network is built over mountains, valleys, deserts, lakes, and seas. In 1949, China has begun the transformation from a rural economy to an urban economy. This transformation does take time and requires persistence. China's vast road network has developed an ascending trend and measures 5 million kilometers as of 2019. The total passenger volume grew from 136 million passengers in 1949 to a staggering 18 billion. There is no mountain high enough and no valley low enough to stop China from reaching it by road. And no, this is not a Grand Prix racetrack. This is China's roads. China now has over 130,000 kilometers of highways nationwide. That's enough to go around the globe more than 3 times. This now gives China the world's largest highway system on the planet. When the wind of change blows, some build walls while others build windmills. What was once thought impossible, villages that were isolated by cliffs and mountains that were yet to be connected, well, China has solved this problem. Winding through the mountains, exotic scenery of steep cliffs hugging the road on both sides, towering deep valleys, twists, and breathtaking bends, layer upon layer, zigzags. These are China's fearsome mountain passes, breathtaking vistas awaiting around every corner. Winding through the Tianjin Mountain, the 561-kilometer highway runs at an altitude of above 2,000 meters for 280 kilometers, and 4 sections are above 3,000 meters. This highway passes through 5 rivers. Some of these mountain roads are incredibly narrow. Some of the most spectacular roads in the world can be found in the Hunan province in China. Highway development in rural areas has marched on to a new level. China has undertaken a major program to upgrade a number of rural roads to boost transport links in some of its most remote areas. China's vision to provide better accessibility in minority inhabited and border areas will provide more job opportunities for the locals. Without the highways, oil, coal, and agricultural products cannot be shipped outside of the regions. During the 13th five-year plan period, which ends this year, China has invested more than $144 billion in poverty-stricken areas, upgrading and constructing over 1.4 million kilometers of rural roads. A staggering 1,100 new towns and 33,500 villages have been opened up thanks to improved roads allowing public bus services to reach these areas. As we get closer to the city, watch episode 2 covering China's bewildering city infrastructure, maze-like flyovers, complex interchanges, giant roller coasters for cars and trucks.
This is one of the highest.
There are many adventurous friends in the world. I always like to challenge some thrilling and exciting places, especially some extremely dangerous roads. Many people are very scared when they drive through it. And there are 10 of the most dangerous roads in China, a paradise for adventurers around the world. After watching the video, do you dare to challenge? Thank you for watching the video. Click to subscribe the channel with your lovely finger. Let's learn more important things happening in China together. First, Sichuan-Tibet Highway, China's Sichuan-Tibet Highway. It is made up of national highways 318, 317, 214, and 109. They cross the Hongguan Mountains in the eastern part of the Qinghai Tibet Plateau. It is the most complex terrain in the world and the most unique alpine canyon area. Sichuan-Tibet is divided into a northern and southern line. In December 1954, the northern line was officially open to traffic. In 1969, it was all completed and open to traffic. At that time, the road construction unit was building the Sichuan-Tibet Highway. When Erlang Mountain is steep, every kilometer, 7 soldiers died because landslides and rock collapses along the way are common. It is recognized as the most dangerous road condition in China, the most difficult road to navigate. Second, Tech Highway. The Tech Highway is a highway from Taiyuan City to Gujiao in China. Its starting point is located in Hekou Town, Gujiao City. The endpoint is Zhao Swanguat, the junction of Taiyuan and Luliang. The total length of the line is 80.3 kilometers. This is why this road is on the list of dangerous roads, mainly because at 31 kilometers, there is a sharp and steep U-shaped bend. From October 1997 to the present, there will be a car almost every week. Traffic accidents occur here. Third, the Matua Highway. The Matua Highway crosses 6 rivers, pass through the Galong Temple through the Galong La Snow Mountain in a tunnel. A long distance is traveled close to the Galankia River. The total length of the route is 117 kilometers, from the Galanra Tunnel at an altitude of 3,700 meters to the town of Matua, more than 1,000 meters. There are a lot of continuous downhills because some waiting sections have higher gravel. By the end of 2018, vehicles with higher chassis can also only be passed due to the complex terrain of the road. Pass by snow-capped canyon forests, rivers, and more, so landslides and mudslides are the most common problems. In addition, there are frequent natural disasters. Fourth, Xinzhong Highway. The Xinzhong Highway generally refers to
Okay, let's move on. This one, come on. Okay, another one. There are several of these roads which is built on top of the rivers. Basically, the reason is that it doesn't want to damage the ecosystem on the two sides of the river, so they build the railway on the bridge on water.
The world's longest tunnel is about to open in China after the country spent 16.8 billion yuan in 6 years to build the 98.3 kilometers long tunnel. So why did China spend so much money to build this tunnel? And what is the significance of it for China? Thank you for watching our videos. If you want to know more about what's happening in the world, don't hesitate to click to subscribe to our channel. I believe my videos won't let you down. Qiling Tunnel, which is located in China's Shaanxi province located in the central part of China, across the Yellow River and the Yangtze River Basin, and is home to nearly 40 million people. Due to the complex terrain here, plateau and mountain is more, the lack of water conservancy project makes a lot of people who live in remote mountains, electricity and water are not the guarantee of stability. In recent years, as China's economy has become stronger and stronger, they have started to think of ways to lift more people out of poverty in the mountains and give farmers a better life. So they decided to build a diversion project for the people living in the area, which would solve the problem of water supply for 11 nearby cities and industries, and greatly improve the quality of life for the nearly 40 million people living in the area. Through their water conservancy project, the project of water transfer scale up to 1.5 billion cubic meters, it will bring the largest DC Hanjiang River water of the Yangtze River and the two large water conservancy hub Huangjinsha and 3 estuary regulation cooperation. After the water conveyance tunnel in Qiling can only succeed through Qiling, the dynamic investment spent a total of 16.8 billion. Say the project is not small. It is also a large-scale project for the benefit of the people.
Okay, let's look at another one. So in the the western part of China, there's a lot of hills, and therefore we see some of these very interesting roads. Here they are moving a train
Ultimate
station.
engineering. How China built a train station in 9 hours. China's incredible high-speed rail. While some of us were probably sitting at our desk yawning into a coffee and blinking at our emails, over in China, a huge group of workers were busy creating the railway for a new train station, being so efficient at their job that it only took them 9 hours. Even Elon Musk tweets praises for the high efficiency of the railway project.
that was a train station. This is a slow speed magnetic levelated train in Chengdu because it needs to climb mountains. So you see the carriages are very short, and it is in slow speed, and then it turns in a circle a number of times before it climb up to where it needs to go. Trains.
This video was made possible by Squarespace. Build your beautiful website for 10% off at squarespace.com/Wendover. Imagine a train that took you from Washington, D.C. to Dallas, Texas in 9 hours, or Paris, France to Athens, Greece in 9 hours, or Adelaide, South Australia to Perth, Western Australia in 9 hours. These train trips actually take 44 hours, 44 hours, and 41 hours respectively, so the idea of making any of these trips by train in 9 hours seems almost absurd. In China, though, that's reality. In September 2018, the country opened up a brand new high-speed rail route with direct trains from Hong Kong to Beijing. This is about the same distance as DC to Dallas, Paris to Athens, or Adelaide to Perth, and yet these trains make the trip in only 8 hours and 56 minutes. What makes this even more impressive is that 10 years ago, in 2008, at the time of the Beijing Olympics, China's high-speed rail network consisted of this. We'll have to zoom in because the extent of the network was one 19-mile-long maglev train from Shanghai Airport to the outskirts of Shanghai and a traditional high-speed rail line from Beijing to the coastal city of Tianjin. Today, 10 years later, that network has expanded into this. China has 8 times as much high-speed track as France, 10 times as much as Japan, 20 times as much as the UK, and 500 times as much as the US. In fact, China has as much high-speed rail track as the rest of the world combined. It is staggering the amount of progress they have made in such a short amount of time. Traditionally, high-speed rail exists in small countries with rich populations by the likes of Germany, France, and Japan. China is neither of these things. The country is enormous, about the same size as the US, and is also not rich. While no longer poor, China is definitively a middle-income country. It's about as rich as Mexico, Thailand, or Brazil. In fact, despite being the country with the most high-speed rail in the world, China is also the poorest country in the world to have any high-speed rail. Despite the country's vast size, China's huge population makes it very dense, especially in the east half. This means that China does have large cities close enough together where it makes sense to take the train rather than the plane. Trips like Guangzhou to Changsha, a distance of 350 miles, take an hour by plane or 2 hours and 20 minutes by train. When factoring in the time it takes to check in, go through security, and board, it absolutely makes sense to go by train when traveling between these two cities, even without considering that the high-speed train is cheaper than flying. High-speed rail even makes sense in China on longer routes where it wouldn't in other countries. Beijing and Shanghai, for example, are about 650 miles apart. Normally, that would be too far for high-speed rail to make sense. Paris and Barcelona, for example, are 500 miles apart, closer than Beijing and Shanghai, but only 2 high-speed trains a day run between the two cities compared to about 20 flights. Between Beijing and Shanghai, on the other hand, about 50 flights run per day compared to 41 trains. Considering the trains carry far more people each, up to 1,200, trains are therefore the dominant means of transport between these two cities. There are a few differences between these two routes. For one, while Beijing-Shanghai by train takes 4 hours and 28 minutes, Paris-Barcelona, despite being a shorter distance, takes a longer 6 hours and 25 minutes. The other factor, though, is about the competition. Europe has an efficient air transport network dominated by budget airlines that are often far cheaper than trains. You can find tickets for flights between Paris and Barcelona for as little as $12, while the cheapest Beijing-Shanghai flights go for $74. Air travel within China is also far from efficient. China Southern, China Eastern, and Air China, the three largest Chinese airlines, arrive on time an average of 67, 66, and 63% of the time, respectively. A big reason for this is that there's just not enough room in the skies. A majority of China's airspace is military controlled, meaning that there are just these narrow flight corridors that account for 30% of airspace where civilian planes can fly. With tons of planes and not much room to fly, planes are frequently delayed by air traffic control to wait for the airspace to clear up, which leads to the abysmal on-time ratings of the country's airlines. While the Beijing-Shanghai flight takes only 2 hours, the potential of delays, along with all the other factors that make air travel slower, help make the train the popular means of transport on this longer route. Other train routes in China, though, make less sense. For example, in 2014, the new high-speed train line opened between Langzhou and Urumqi. These two cities are relatively small by China standards. They both have a population of 3.5 million, and between them are only small towns. They're also not close. About 1,000 miles separate them. This project could therefore be compared to building a high-speed train from Denver to Seattle. They're modestly sized cities a long ways apart, with nothing big in between. Some people would use it, but it wouldn't make any financial sense. In China, Langzhou and Urumqi are not small cities, but there's really nothing big in between, and at that distance, there's no sense not flying. The Langzhou-Urumqi high-speed train takes 11 hours compared to the 2.5-hour flight, and the construction cost of that line was $20 billion, meaning that if every seat on every train was filled, tickets would still have to cost $400 each way just to make back the construction cost in 30 years. In reality, tickets cost about $80 and trains are far from full, meaning that this rail line is just insanely far from profitable. The ticket revenues from these trains reportedly don't even cover the cost of electricity for the line, let alone construction and other operating costs. So why would the Chinese government sink so much money into something that has no prospects of really ever making money? Well, politics. Urumqi is the capital of the Xinjiang province. While 92% of China's population is Han Chinese, the Xinjiang province is primarily Uyghur, one of the minority ethnic groups of China, and there has been an ongoing, fairly strong separatist movement by the Uyghurs from China that has often turned violent. The central government in Beijing, however, wants the Xinjiang province to be just as integrated as the rest of the country and has tried a variety of methods to force this, including moving Han Chinese into the region and the imprisonment of Uyghurs in so-called re-education camps. The high-speed train is just the most recent tactic to bring Xinjiang closer to Beijing, and this is no secret. The central government is fully upfront in saying that the line was built to promote, as they call it, ethnic unity. This isn't the first time that they've used this tactic of railroad politics. Tibet, a region even better known than Xinjiang for its independence movement, was the last region in China not to have a railway due to its small population and intense terrain. The central government still wanted to build one, though, to bring it closer to the rest of the country, and so they did. Trains now run directly from Beijing to Lhasa, Tibet in 47 hours on the highest elevation rail line in the world. These trains reach an elevation of 16,640 feet, so high that passengers have to use direct oxygen supply. Even the train to Hong Kong serves the central government's goal of further integrating Hong Kong, which is an autonomous special administrative region, into mainland China. While high-speed trains to Hong Kong certainly do make a lot more sense than trains to the Xinjiang province, many Hong Kongers have not greeted the new service kindly, as they view it as an encroachment on the autonomy guaranteed to them by Hong Kong basic law. The most controversial part has not been the fact that there's a train, but rather that the station in Hong Kong includes an area that is effectively now part of mainland China since people pass through border controls before boarding the train in Hong Kong. Just like any country, what having a high-speed, efficient rail network in China is doing is bringing the country together and making it stronger, even if it's bringing together people that want to stay apart. No matter their motives,
China has unveiled a new type of maglev train that claims to be the fastest ground transport service on the planet. The insanely fast train is capable of traveling up to 600 kilometers per hour, roughly equivalent to 373 miles per hour. That's nearly half the speed of sound and faster than some private planes. The train was revealed by its manufacturer, CRRC Corporation, which is owned by the Chinese government. According to its builder, the new trains will make the approximately 1,200 kilometer trip between Beijing and Shanghai in 3.5 hours, including waiting time. For comparison, this trip takes...
Okay, about buildings.
China has one of the oldest, continuously surviving and thriving civilizations in the world today. The history of China can be traced back to over 4,000 years ago. It was roughly around 2000 BC when the ancient Chinese civilization began to flourish around the Yangtze River. Since then, one dynasty after another rose up and ruled over China. And since the country never went through any major invasion by a foreign enemy or a major disaster, the Chinese civilization continued to grow and prosper in spite of the internal wars and scuffle for power. Fast forward to today, and China has emerged as a global superpower, leading the world in many industries, one of these being construction. One thing that China understands quite well is that if you want to build something big, then you need some big machines. Add a large workforce to this equation, and you have the perfect recipe to build mega structures at unprecedented speeds. In the last 10 years alone, China's laid down a network of over 6,000 kilometers of road every year. China's built multiple bridges for rail and road networks at a lightning fast pace. Building bridges is neither fast nor easy, but China's proven this wrong with the help of a monstrous machine called SLJ 900. Developed by Beijing Wow Joint Machinery Company, the SLJ 900 is almost 300 feet long, 24 feet wide, and weighs a monstrous 580 tons. A single SLJ 900 can help create almost 750 bridges in its lifetime. The machine only needs the pylons of the bridge to be properly erected in their places. As long as the pylons are properly installed, the SLJ 900 can extend past the pre-made bridge segment to lay down a further segment. Once the segment's been laid down, it can go back and bring forth another segment to be laid down. Even while carrying maximum load, the SLJ 900, or the Iron Monster as it's commonly known, can move at almost 5 kilometers per hour, which makes...
Okay, we have seen that, and then this one.
Unbelievable mega engineering. 10-story residential building constructed in 28 hours. In an amazing achievement that has caught place in social media, a real estate developer in China has completed a 10-story earthquake-resistant residential skyscraper within 28 hours. Broad Group, the developer of the building, uploaded a video of the construction in China's Changsha city, which has gone viral. Broad Group has indicated the structure is earthquake-resistant and can also be broken and transferred to another place, according to the company. This is the world's shortest construction period for a skyscraper of its scale. Tower built from stainless steel modules. The apartment block was constructed using conventional container-sized modular components manufactured in a Broad Group plant and has a stainless steel structure. Each module is 12.19 meters in length, which is about 40 feet, 2.44 meters in width, which is about 8 feet, and 3 meters in height, which is about 10 feet. The container-shaped modules are layered one on top of the other to create a column-free room measuring 12 meters by 4.8 meters. The unit's windows and balconies pull out to enclose the spaces. 10 stories can be erected in one day. The modules are delivered to the site with all of the wiring and interior finishes already done so they can be put together quickly. It's extremely simple to set up on site, says the company. Just tighten the bolts and connect the water and electricity, and as quickly as 10 stories can be built in one day. They were made with walls and floors made of stainless steel slabs that were made of 2 stainless steel plates kept separate by many stainless steel tubes. In the words of the company, these B-core slabs are lighter and 100 times stronger than traditional floor plates. Company claims system could be used for 200-story skyscrapers.
Okay, airports.
China is no stranger to record-breaking infrastructure projects. Already home to the world's largest dam, longest ocean crossing, and most extensive high-speed rail network, the country has now completed one of the largest airports ever conceived. Home to one of the world's largest economies, the demand for air travel in and out of China is extreme. As the nation's center of political power, and as the second largest city in a country of more than 1.3 billion people, the pressure on Beijing is particularly intense. Plans for a second international airport were first proposed in 2008, while the existing Beijing Capital International was on.
Since we are running out of time, I think I will just show a few more videos and then I will leave the rest of the video for next term sometime. So that was the unmanned goods delivery. And this one is a unmanned little van. And I think this is another small van, self-driving car. This is a small firefighting and this is for COVID testing.
核酸检测中，请摘下口罩，配合检测。检测完成，谢谢配合，祝您生活愉快。
小红书。
RMB, right? Digital RMB, the new government digital currency. A lot of people don't understand what's the whole buzz and fuss about it, but think about it. Within the next 3 to 5 years, China wants to eliminate cash. There will be just digital RMB. With digital RMB, you don't need internet, and it is accepted by absolutely everyone, and it is protected by a crypto system and setup. And already in Shenzhen earlier this year, they had 30,000 or something people that received their payment, their government salary, with digital RMB. And this is the future. And kids, a lot of people say, okay, how can kids do that if they cannot have, digital? Well, kids have the watch that is like smartwatch, and they can pay also using that watch. It's incredible. And of course, facial recognition is everywhere. So the payment doesn't even need you to bring a device in a couple of years from now. Right now, also in many places, you pay with your face. But later on, you don't need a device. You just come, and the digital RMB belongs to a person. So I think that understanding what China is building right now is crucial for all businesses. Because as we are entering the market, as we are players in this market, as we are serving that consumer, if you don't deeply understand how it actually works, you are disconnected and you are irrelevant in no time.
Okay, so see how digital face recognition works in a school canteen.
1, 2, 3, hiding from the rain and snow, trying to forget, but I won't let go. Looking at a crowded street, listening to my own heartbeat.
So these students just use their face as a payment system. They just stand before the equipment, then charges will made accordingly. So I think I running out of time, so I will stop here and answer some questions. So anyone, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and then ask your questions. No? Yes, please.
Albert, are you able to tour around and see these bridges and sites? Are there tours that take you to see these things?
Yeah, I hope so. There are things like what's it called? Rental cars in China. So I would like to be able to get a license and then drive around China myself sometime before I die. So at the moment, the air tickets to Hong Kong and China is a bit expensive. So I'm waiting for that to come into a more reasonable price, then I will start traveling. Yes, you can go to different places, but most of them are in the western part of China. So my plan will probably fly to somewhere like Shanghai, and then take a high-speed train to some city in the west, like Kunming and so forth, and then start driving from them. From there, I probably want to drive a Caravan types of vehicle. Maybe in the near future, yes.
I guess you have put a lot of work into collecting these things that you can visit. But for people, other people like myself, who don't really know where these things are, is this a firm that will travel you around and actually look at bridges and roads? And
yeah. There are different types of tour organization in China. There are some tourist organization which can cater for your special interests. So you want to travel in a small group, say accommodate by events, then you can ask this to provide you with a tour guide who will design a itinerary to your interests. Yes, there are services like that in China. But you have to organize it beforehand, of course, through internet, and then fly to a certain city, and then they will pick you up there and then take you all the way until you come back to the airport and send you away. Yes, there are such services in China. So you would like to join one of them, of course, depending on your group size, they can provide you with, for example, English speaking tour guide, no problem.
with some of these things that you showed us, where the Chinese were providing facilities to country people, they seem to be enormous cost.
Yes. For example, the train line onto Tibet, that train line will not make money in 200 years. But there's a different meaning to equity in China. Even I know that, for example, in some country towns in Australia, the population is not large enough to, for example, pay for a mobile telephone tower. So the mobile company will not build a tower because it makes no commercial sense. But in China, the government put in the regulation that if you are developing a mobile plan in this region, you can bid for a region, then you have to ensure everybody in the region, no matter how remote, will have the same internet access. So in China, even in, say, Tibet, which has very low population, there is 5G networks. It is just a regulation. So that is the kind of equity. In China, the equity is not because of whether it's profitable or not. It is defined as everybody should enjoy the same infrastructure. So if you look at each individual lines as a entity, some lines doesn't make sense because it will never make money. But to a country, letting every people can move about freely, releases the economic potential, which is not captured by the line, it's actually captured by the whole country. So if you think in terms of a country instead of individual lines, then it makes sense. For example, the line between mainland, the mainland to Tibet, because of the as the Chinese government say, we want to promote harmony between the people. If you can save a tourist attack that saves several lives, how much it worth for our lives, we don't know, but it's worth something, isn't it?
China doesn't have a huge GDP per person.
Correct.
Although it has an enormous amount of money as a country.
Yes.
So
because of the sheer size of the population.
yeah.
So yeah.
So how does it afford these huge, expensive bridges, etc.?
Okay, now, if the technology is owned by Chinese, okay, if the technology is owned by Chinese, or somehow the Chinese acquire the technology at a cost, for example, okay, doesn't matter. Then domestic construction are all paid for in renminbi, which is printed by the Chinese government. The raw materials imported into China, of course, will cost them the so-called foreign exchange. They need foreign exchange to pay for all the iron ore, the raw material, the energy, etc., etc. Yeah, that will, we have to look at it as a country's trade balance. The China has run trade balances surplus for the last 30, 40 years. So it has a large collection of foreign reserve. That foreign reserve will enable China to acquire technologies or material, etc. Once that material technology is acquired, it is now owned by China. So it is a matter of internal accounting, so to speak, to pay for the workers within China. And remember, how to pay for it? By printing renminbi. It's not using foreign reserve. So as long as the whole country itself, we maintain a trade surplus, then it can continue to grow. Internal consumption is internal consumption, doesn't affect the whole thing as a whole. Just like we human beings, okay, we need certain input into our mouth to keep us running. But once in our mouth, the rest, whether you build a finger or what, is internal mechanism. So building infrastructure is internal mechanism, is promoting a domestic economy. It doesn't affect whether the country is losing money. It's not losing money because it, with good infrastructure, the factories make more goods at lower cost and then selling better to the rest of the world, and therefore make money as a country with trade surplus. So I would like to think of economics, macroeconomics, in terms of economics within the country, domestic economy and global economy. Domestic economy can be solved simply by printing money by the government. Government running deficits is not issue. You basically just accounting. Okay, is your left pocket only money to your right pocket? It doesn't matter, as long as you have money. Whether your right pocket is very poor or the left pocket is very poor, doesn't matter. You just transfer the money in between. So in terms of internal infrastructure, as long as it is the technology, the material, everything is owned by Chinese, then it is domestic. But if they need to acquire external input from other countries, they have to pay for it using foreign reserve. Does that make sense?
Okay. Last time you showed us where China was so much in advance of other countries. And yes, I accept that. But per head of population, how does that compare?
China, at the end of the Second World War, okay, China is broke, very, very broke. Remember that in West Asia, we had the Second World War, but in China, the war against Japanese started at least 3 years earlier. And therefore, for Chinese, the Second World War is 3 years longer than the rest of the world, okay? And before the Japanese invasion into China, China had just becomes a republic in 1911. And before that is the Qing dynasty, in which it has been losing wars, losing money, everything to the rest of the world. So China becomes very, very poor when immediately after the war. Then immediately after the war, the government responsible for China during the war is the Republic of China, which restruck to Taiwan and becomes the current Taiwan government. And Mao Zedong, the Communist Party, take over China and form the People's Republic of China. At that time, Chinese life expectancy is about 35 years. 35 years. It is only 70 something years later today. Chinese life expectancy is now 78 years. In terms of literacy, at that time, at the end of the war, the literacy is about 12%. Today is almost 99% literacy. In terms of poverty, Chinese eliminated extreme poverty in 2020. So there is a lot of growth in this short time. During this short time, how Chinese can do that? Now, this is one of the, I think it's $5 million question. How can a country like China at the end of Second World War, so poor, to become a major economy within, say, 2 to 3 generations? How can they do that? Well, the first thing is Chinese try to learn everything from anywhere. This is like the Muslim civilization. During about year 500, 8500, the Muslims started. The first thing they do is do translation of all material into Arabic. And then for another about 500 years, Muslim countries, Middle East, the Arabic countries becomes the civilization center of the world. And then later on, we have the European Renaissance. Then Europeans started learning everything, building everything, accumulate technology, having science, etc. And then the European economy just explode. And then, of course, that come to this First World War, Second World War, and then the modern world. It's all about learning. So if people can start learning, then it will grow. Of course, given China's massive population size, city like Beijing, Shanghai is the world's most advanced city by a large margin. But in its second tier, third tier, or fourth tier cities, like cities which are a few million people, or even cities with only say 100,000 people or 300,000 people, these are small towns. China need to develop. And I talk about the equity. So the Chinese government say, well, we will let some people get rich first. And then these rich people will have the responsibility to help the other people to come back and then becomes profits. So 2020, they eliminated the extreme poverty. What they are now doing is common prosperity, asking the rich people to help the less fortunate provinces and the less fortunate people to get up, learn a new skill, learn something, and then start your own life in a better way than before. Yes, China still is on the East Coast. It is very wealthy, rich country like, but moving towards the West, it become poorer and poorer and poorer and poorer. But the Chinese government said, no, we can't do that. We have to get these people out from poverty and let them prosperous as well. So they're investing. Technology-wise, again, all technology events is based on human innovations. Human innovations in a large population. The percentages of bright people are almost the same. We have, say, 5% clever people everywhere. But 5% on a large population means, in terms of absolute number, more bright people in China. The other thing is, at the moment, the brightest students in Western world study economics, management, business. But the brightest student in China studies science, technology, engineering, medicine. I think there is a big difference. The sheer size of the population, that means we have equally bright students in absolute number is 4 times as much as United States. And they speak the same language. Everybody, no matter whether you are which minor ethnic groups, doesn't matter. There is a common national language. This is the advantage over India. India doesn't have this common language, but China has a common language. Although a lot of people like myself speak Cantonese, not Mandarin, but it doesn't matter. When I go to China, I speak Mandarin. I have to speak Mandarin, although very poorly, but still I manage.
Mandarin is quite different to Cantonese, from my understanding.
It's very different. We have so many different dialects. All the dialects cannot speak to each other, but we can write to each other.
How many people speak Cantonese? What percentage?
About 30 million people speak Cantonese.
I have a question, Albert. How big an impact did the development of computerized printing have on the spread of knowledge for China?
Good question. The internet, the largest language the largest user base of a language in the world is Chinese internet. 1.4 billion users just in China. And they share everything. And the knowledge spread in China is now very rapid. Here, there's a lot of, for example, if I want to find a academic article, read about a certain research, if I'm a member of a university, then you can access that document, okay, through the subscription of the university. But I don't have that subscription anymore because I'm no longer a student or a teacher at a university. So I don't have that subscription. To me, that means doing research is difficult. But if I switch over to Chinese, then I can search articles in China freely. And the subscription I have to pay is about $50 per year. That's only one paper worth of money in Western world.
No, thank you. The reason I ask is that I think that what led to the Industrial Revolution in Western society, in Europe, was the development of the printing press.
Yeah.
And I suspect that a similar effect has happened with the development of word processing, computerized printing for China.
Yeah. We don't read paper anymore. I read using.
Yes.
So this is now a A4 size reading paper.
Yes.
So I got it from China. So people do that now. For example, this thing has 8 gigabyte of memory, which means I can store about 4,000 books on it. So,
Thank you.
and I have many books I want to read. The Chinese now, again, translating everything into Chinese, almost everything. So the Chinese catalog is huge. They digitize the old manuscripts, but they also translate modern papers into Chinese. Some of them is translated automatically by AI or artificial intelligence, but
yes,
that's good enough for a lot of people, because basically when we read, we know a little bit of the other language. For example, when I'm reading an article in English, I may be able to read the abstract, then I will pay for the full paper. Then I switch over to China, search the authors, find their Chinese translated paper, and then my $50 subscription pay for me. I can read anything I like. No problem. Yeah.
So machine translation is also very big step forward.
Yeah, there's a large number of them is machine translated.
Yeah.
But that's good enough. You only want the data or a little bit. If you read a scientific, you probably know the methodology. You know what you're looking at is basically the result, their type, their tables, their figures. That's what I look for in an article. So.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any more question? No? Okay, now next term will be a little bit different, and I'm collecting some artificial intelligence modified photos and videos from about 100 years ago. So I will be showing you a little bit, not China today, China 100 years ago. About that time, we're trying to get some of it, but there's an element of artificial intelligence to modify the videos into color. I think that will give us another look at the turn of last century, what China's states are. And then I think with that, we can appreciate what China is today. Yes, is there another question?